Hi there. So there's a lot to talk about this week. I watched a lot of the Democratic National Convention. And the main thing that struck me was how gloomy everybody was, but also I was particularly struck by the lies. I just watched a video by Patricia Dixon, and she talked about it. She really captured what for me was the most striking, particularly when I listened to former President Obama and former President Clinton. They just lied. It was shocking, actually. I actually felt teary-eyed listening to Bill Clinton because I used to work for him. I was in his campaign in Little Rock. What's wrong with these people? But I think a lot of people are feeling that way. Again, Patricia Dixon talked about it, but I just got a comment from Chris in Vegas, and he said, I think Trump has done some good things and gets no credit or respect. I don't remember ever seeing such hatred, such dishonesty, all from the Democratic Party. And he's someone who's been a Democrat. So it's shocking. But I'm glad, Chris, I'm glad you're seeing it. Because the people that don't see it, something's wrong. Do you just believe authorities because of what they tell you? I mean, I've really been puzzling about this all week. I also had to deal with my own issues, which were, I hate the masks. Now, I should hate the masks, a lot of you, but whenever something really, really bothers you, there's a lot of things you can pick out in the world to be bothered about. So why is it that I'm so bothered about the masks? And one thing that set me off was hearing that on a JetBlue flight, every child over the age of 2 has to wear a mask. And they actually kicked a woman and her 6 kids because she had trouble getting the 2-year-old to put a mask on. They kicked her off the flight. And that bothered me a lot. I had to try to do reframing, try to get my, maybe there's more to the story, whatever. And then I realized that's symbolism to me, that if a government can shut you up, if society can shut you up, if we think that's okay, there's something wrong, and that really, it's almost claustrophobic. They're shutting off your expression. I'm still trying to figure this out. And I'm not trying to talk myself out of not being bothered about the masks, but of all the things going on with the shutdown, for me personally, it's the masks. So I'm trying to use it as an opportunity for inner growth. And you could ask, and I still want to stay mad about it, if you know what I mean. I still want to take action and not fall into that trap. But at the same time, it's up to me how I'm going to feel internally. So here was another thing that upset me this week. So I'm at the park doing my run, and I'm pretty friendly with people. And there was a man, he probably was, I don't know, early 70s, something like that, sitting on a lawn chair, and he had a mask on. So I kind of ignored him first time, and then the second time I ran past, he had the mask off. And I said, oh, nice to see you without a mask. And he smiled, and I said, oh, and you have a lovely smile too. I mean, I always talk with people like that. And when, so we got into a conversation. And he said, well, my son's a doctor in New York, and, should we wear a mask? And I said, well, you could tell him you wear the mask, but you don't have to. Because he said that it bothers him when he's trying to walk, to wear the mask. So he doesn't walk as much. And but he tries to stay. And so I got into one of my health discussions, and I'm walking around talking to him. But he said something that struck me. He said, "I can't wait till the authorities say we don't have to wear masks." And I said, "What, you think the authorities know?" It was just a shock to me. You would turn over a decision like that to the authorities? I'm thinking, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, and some minion he has who knows about public health. It's like, what? So I started challenging him a little bit on that. Like, you can't figure this out? Like, we're outside, there's the ocean, we've got all this fresh air, you're super social distanced, you need them to tell you this? It was shocking. So then I got into my rant about hydroxychloroquine and all these things, and mentioned Trump, and it became very clear I supported Trump. And I don't know how he got on it, but he just said, he said, "Oh, you watch Fox News." And I said, "Yeah, Fox News is not that great." Really? I said, I used to be a Democrat. But here's the thing. I was incredulous with what he said about Trump. Incredulous. And it was so revolting. It was like almost a shock. I mean, he just, again, flat out lied. I mean, he's believing all these lies. What it told me is this is what is being said on mainstream media. This is all he hears. All he hears. See, I try to tune that out so I don't hear it as much because I can't stand to hear it. I don't like hearing President Trump criticized unfairly. I stay away from it. Occasionally I accidentally get on it on Twitter and I just like, what planet are these people on? So he said he doesn't believe in the Constitution. I go, what do you mean? I disputed every point, but I'm like, what? Okay, what? What's wrong with you? I kind of got into his face, he was a little, whatever. I can be a pretty strong personality, can you tell? Anyway, the things he said. And then I said, and really? So you're going to vote for Biden? He clearly has cognitive decline. And this is what he said. I would vote for Hitler before I'd vote for Trump. And I just said, it's a civil war, buddy. And I just left. I just ran off. I was reeling to be in the presence of somebody who appears to be normal and intelligent to say that. So I thought, wow, because in my mind it's like, okay, people got to catch on. But thank you, Chris from Vegas. I am so appreciative that you can see the lies. You're a Democrat, and you're seeing the lies. So people are seeing it. There are a lot of smart people out there. But this guy, what is that? And so I've been thinking about that and thinking about freedom. I'm kind of jumping around here, but my head is exploding with all these thoughts. William Solomon, thank you. He sent me a link to a video. He actually sent me a link to a couple videos, which were all good. I was very happy to see them. But this one I watched last night, and I will put a link to it on the pinned comment, so it'll show up as the first comment. It's a young woman who escaped she's 26. She escaped from North Korea. And it's like an hour and a half interview. But don't think, okay, I'm gonna learn something and this is an hour and a half. No, it's really interesting. I thought I'll watch a little bit, it was an hour and a half, but I just kept listening to it. It was so good. It wasn't upsetting to me in the same way that William said it was, heartbreaking for him to listen. Again, we all react differently for me, it was not so much heartbreaking as to see what happens to people when they're from the get-go told what to do in a very authoritative government. By the way, her name is Yeonmi Park. And it's Valuetainment, the channel, and it's called North Korean Defector Exposes Kim Jong-un and China. But she also has a book, In Order to Live, which I've ordered the paperback, and I downloaded the audible.com, which I'll listen to later, because she is really interesting and makes wonderful observations. But here's one of the things that struck me as I listened to her, is that the things she said about freedom. When she finally got free, when she was in South Korea, she said, being free was painful. Being free was painful because you have to take responsibility for your own choices. So I thought about that man in the park. He doesn't have to decide what to do about his health. All he has to do is, when the authorities tell him to wear the mask, he'll wear the mask. And then he'll feel safe, I guess. He doesn't have to think for himself. These people that want the government to do something, the government to make all these choices for you, these decisions for you, the doctor to make choices, they're not free. Freedom is hard. And I realized, I never really liked being a kid. I was kind of always getting in trouble. Nothing major, not like I was a juvenile delinquent, but I get a U for unsatisfactory and behavior, because if a rule didn't make sense to me, I wouldn't follow it. But if you explained it and it made sense, then I'd follow it. But you couldn't just say, don't do this, don't do that. That wouldn't work for me. And it certainly doesn't work for me now. I don't want people telling me what to do. So I have to tell you, I'm rethinking everything. I used to think, okay, we scientist types can come up with good rules for people, like seatbelts, helmets if you're a motorcycle rider, and all of those things are prudent measures. But should the government really be mandating that? I was talking with Robert, my stepson, yesterday about this, and I was saying, what about car seats for kids? Why is that required? I grew up without it, and it's true. There were more car accidents with people, but my mother would hold the baby. We had a lot of kids. My dad would drive, and the kids in the back seat. We'd be in the back of the station wagon, playing, rolling around. I don't know. Why is the government doing that? Where does it end? This constant, let's make this other rule, let's do this. And keep in mind, the government messes up. They certainly mess up when they give dietary recommendations. But then when does it creep into a requirement? Okay? Like, if I have cancer, I probably would never get chemo or radiation. That's just me. I would look into the data and I would figure out what to do, because I think there's some good treatments out there. But I wouldn't want to do anything that hurts my vitality in the longer run. That's me. That's my choice. But what if, I don't know, my Medicare, because I have Medicare, required me, because I always get these notices, have you had your colonoscopy, a mammogram, and I do no cancer screening. But what if it was hinged, my insurance was hinged on me doing that? Well, I wouldn't have health insurance then. But the point is that we have to be very careful, people, very careful, that we don't let this creeping authoritarianism get to us, because it is actually, a lot of it is out there. And as you know, I've changed my mind about vaccinations. Boy, I used to be very pro-vaccination. Now I'm like, no, only unless if you don't get the vaccination, you have a chance of getting something that is really bad. So people that had chickenpox as a kid, I know for a fact that shingles is super, super painful. I've known 2 people that have had it, and it's just awful, awful. So I got the shingles vaccine because I had chickenpox as a kid. I mean, I had all those things. But I'll think about it. I'm not going to get the flu shot anymore. I mean, I've heard a lot of bad things about that. So I won't be doing that. But I'm really thinking about freedom and why many people don't like it. Because, and that's one of the things that really struck me about Yeonmi Park. She's just a delightful woman, young woman, really, really smart. And you know, I think it's important to hear stories like that. For one thing, if you're feeling down about anything in your life, just watch that and you'll you realize how good you have it. I mean, even if you're sick, even if you're miserable, I mean, I wasn't feeling that way, but even if you had all of those things going on, you listen to this and you think, wow. I mean, I have it pretty good. No matter how bad it is, anybody in the U.S., no matter what's going on with them, would have it better than she had it. And somebody made this comment on the video, quoting Sigmund Freud. I assume it's a correct quote. Most people do not really want freedom because freedom involves responsibility, and most people are frightened of responsibility. Wow. By the way, I have 2 people, and there may be more of you, and I really appreciate your comments on my site because you like this Yeonmi Park in North Korea. You have been, or your family has been, under socialism, like Triana. I love having Triana comment because she was born and raised in Cuba, and it was really bad. And so Triana, thank you. Thank you for being on this site. Thank you for making your comments because you really understand. And then I just got a comment from Raynona Boyer. Her family came from Russia, and some of her relatives were murdered, others starved to death in the gulag. So people who know what it's like to live under communism, socialism, any of these isms, really are very, very important voices, and we need to listen to them. Because we've got really too many people who've had it so good and they're just willing to throw it all away. They have no idea. And we have to fight against that. People, we have to fight against that. So that's my mission these days, in addition to enjoying life and trying to learn from what upsets me. Because I don't want to be waking up in the middle of the night because I'm horrified that they would make little kids wear masks. 2 years old. That is just disgusting, people. That is so disgusting. So, okay. And then I thought, because I was worried that people will get used to this and just think it's kind of normal. People are sick. What do they think we are? Do they think we live in China under the communist, Chinese Communist Party, where they all put their masks on? I was thinking about this too, because one of the things I noticed, I visited, the Soviet Union twice, but it was really interesting in some of the cities, not Soviet Central Asia, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan and all those places, Tajikistan, because they had like the open air markets and things like that. But I noticed in Leningrad, and I noticed it in Mongolia, one year we went to Mongolia. By the way, I loved being out in the Gobi Desert. That was like so cool. But although you're milk was like the worst tasting thing I've ever tasted. I have all kinds of stories. But one of the things that struck me, because I always like to make eye contact with little kids and smile and wave and all over the world, little kids, usually they're curious about tourists and they run up to you and they just want to know things. But in Mongolia and Leningrad, no expression. No expression. It's like they're dead. And listening to Yan Mi Park, she explained about how she was just kind of numb. You just learn to, it's almost like you don't even have feelings. Her feelings were just numbed. And then I thought, what is a mask? What is that doing to us? Because we have facial expressions. Even people, with all the social distancing and the masks, it kind of makes us just compliant and not interacting with other people. And makes us numb. I don't like that. I'd be interested in your comments regarding this, any of you that have them, because I'm still working on this. I'm still trying to figure it out, but I'm still not wearing the mask. So in Santa Monica, actually maybe more closer to Venice, because I was driving there and there was a sign that said, they always have signs, masks are required, whatever, I ignore them. But it said, may have a $50 fine. So I thought, a lot of people are going to be frightened by that. Like, I could get a fine. I thought, I'm not worried about that. In fact, if a police officer tried to fine me because I wasn't wearing a mask, I'd really like to talk with them. Of course, I'll be very respectful, very polite, but I would ask them, why are you citing me for this? Why would you take someone who strongly supports the police and make me angry? Why would you do that? I'll just talk to them. Because whenever you're a police officer, you make a choice as to, am I going to cite this person? Am I going to cite that person? I know if you're part of the California Highway Patrol, the CHP, they got to catch a certain number of speeders because, they need the money. But I don't think they're set up in Santa Monica to try to collect money from non-mask wearers, because roughly half the people don't wear masks. But I'm not going to let that control me. How dare they? Okay? How dare they? So one of the things I found as a helpful tip in life is, if you're kind of afraid of something, think, what is the worst that can happen? And then come to terms with that. Because if you let fear of what someone might do affect your actions, you're not free. Nobody's totally free. I'm not trying to say that you are. But one of the things you can do is say, what's the worst that can happen? And then be okay with that. I just thought of something that was actually, it sounds kind of morbid, but it was actually very, very freeing. So I used to go and look at the stars a lot. So I was in New Mexico. It was kind of in the middle of the night, and I'm lying out, all bundled up, looking at the stars. And I had stopped working in terms of a full-time job. And I suddenly realized I'd had a great life. I'd accomplished a ton of things. And this was like almost 20 years ago now. And I thought, it would be okay if I died, because I've had a full life. And you may think, oh my God, that sounds terrible. But actually, it was freeing. And those of you who have kids and people who you're taking care of, like I was very careful when I was taking care of my late husband Harold in the last year was like, I cannot get sick, I cannot die, because what would happen to him, okay? So when you have people that you're taking care of, you know, there's fear. Like, what if something happened to me and I wasn't there to take care of them? So this doesn't apply to everybody, but oh my gosh, that was so freeing. That was so freeing for me. And except for that year when I was taking care of Harold, I felt that kind of freedom. And you know, it doesn't hurt my health. It doesn't mean I'm not enjoying life and taking care of myself, but nobody's going to take away my freedom. And we as Americans need to fight every day for our freedom. Let me say that again. We as Americans have to fight every day for our freedom. And as you know, I love our president. So I take it personally when he's insulted. Okay? I'm angry when he's insulted. It's like, I'm not listening to that BS. That would be like insulting somebody whom I love or care about. I'll defend them. I'm not going to listen to that. Okay? So, I like Michael Knowles. I listen to him. And he talks a lot about, you know, the content of your character and whether you have an objective truth. You know, as a society, you need an objective truth. And, you know, I think about that. And I want to mention something that's long bothered me. It's like, I'm bothered when I'm watching a movie and they're glamorizing, I don't know, like Ocean's 11, they're stealing. Why are these people being glamorized? That's wrong. And I'm kind of wondering if it's sort of a leftist thing. Because, I mean, I will break rules. I'm not saying I follow the rules, that I don't. If I think a rule's not fair, I'll break it. But that to me is not cheating. That's not stealing from somebody else. That's just saying I think that's a stupid rule and I'm not going to follow it. But I remember talking to someone who's not in my life anymore, and she's very liberal, you could say, a leftist. And we were discussing something, because I guess and this was many, many years ago, so I was a Democrat, so not all Democrats are bad, okay? But we were talking about a truck, you know, one of those armored vehicles that has cash, and it fell out in the street. And so a lot of people were running and picking up the cash and taking off, because there was no way they could stop it. It was just a mess. And I said, that's just wrong. I mean, I would try to help collect it to give it back. And she said, no, I would, you know, take it. I guess because it's impersonal and you wouldn't get caught, that's okay. I never liked cheating on tests at school. It's like, no, that's not fair. Like, don't cheat on tests. And what is that teaching people? You know, like this school scandal, which I just saw again on TV, you know, these people who paid money to get their kids in school. I'm thinking, what does that do to the soul or character of the child that knows they got in unfairly? That is just wrong. Okay? Why do we celebrate that in movies? And it's in a lot of movies. So if you're watching movies with your kids or something, please, I hope you're pointing this out to them. Hope you're saying why this is wrong, because you're going to watch movies. But there should be like a little commentary. Don't just let your kids watch movies without giving your opinion of what's really the message, because it's all written by Hollywood leftist types. Like, there's almost no God, there's no religion. I mean, point that out. Go, okay, that was a fun story, but notice they never prayed, they never mentioned God, or that they thought it was okay to do that. And one of the other things about the masks, because I'm trying to refrain, like, I'm so upset. Because really, a baby wearing a mask, or a 2-year-old wearing a mask, that's horrible. But there's a lot of horrible things that happen to kids, a lot of horrible things. So why is my brain just like fixating on that? And part of it is that if they grow up thinking that's normal. But then I was relieved to think about all the movies that are out there, all the historical things. So even a little child that thinks, oh, when you go to school you wear a mask, and oh, you spray everything down, you try to keep everything super clean. They're going to see movies where people aren't social distancing, where people are playing together, people are being friendly. They're going to see all this, and they're not worried about germs. And so there's a lot out there that they'll see that it doesn't have to be this way. And there's another thing. And now it's good for me because most of my money is in a thing called the Vanguard Total Index, which is an ETF, which has gone up tremendously since Trump was elected. Now, at the start of this whole shutdown, it dropped to 109.49. That's the 52-week low. And its 52-week high, I think last January, before all this happened, was 172.56. 172.56. It's now 172.5. It's almost at its peak. What is going on? I'm thinking, there's a lot of people making money off this thing. A lot of people, like Amazon, the tech companies, they're doing fine. But think of all the small businesses that have been forced to close or curtail. They probably don't have stock. Now, of course, there's always a problem with the airline stocks, things like that. But I'm trying to figure that out. I'm happy for me, I'm happy for my investment. And as I advised people in one of my videos some time ago, just like sit tight. As long as Trump is in office, just sit tight. But I'm selling if Trump for some reason didn't win, because it was much, much lower under Obama's administration, much lower. It just shot up and continued to shoot up after Trump became president. But anyway, I really don't like the Democrats anymore. It is a civil war. If people completely shut themselves off from looking at information on their own, and not just what the mainstream media and liberal Hollywood tells them to think and do, it's a different world. And if they go so far, like that man in the park, to say he would vote for Hitler rather than vote for Trump. Wow. That is, I did say, I got right in his face. I go, you clearly have a severe case of Trump derangement syndrome. Clearly. And I'll have choice words to say to him if I see him again. Finally, I'd like to close with just some observations about social media. This is just my little pet peeve, if you will. And that is, sometimes it's better not to make a comment. Like, even if you think something, think about what it means to the person who's reading it. Okay? Just because you have a thought, you don't have to pile on. Like, I was distressed. I admit I was distressed when Barron Trump got off the plane and he was very tall, and people were noticing it. Well, why do you have to say anything about that? You don't think he knows he's tall? You don't think he hears that? I mean, so if a child, and this is particularly true for children, if a child walks in and they have curly hair, say, okay, they know they have curly hair. You don't have to comment on their curly hair. They've heard it before, okay? Just because it, you know, I mean, we all know not to do that if somebody walks in and they're fat, say. You're not going to go, maybe your first thought is, wow, they are really fat. But you don't say it, okay? We know that. And we've learned, you know, if you're in a wheelchair, you don't say, oh my God, you're in a wheelchair, but we notice, okay? The point is, even if you think it's good, don't say anything, okay? Just be with that person. Don't, like, point it out. So all these Trump supporters, okay, wow, what's Barron been eating? You know, it's just like, oh my God, I just hope he doesn't look on Twitter. I mean, give the kid a break, okay? He knows he's tall. Leave him alone. And when somebody invites you in your home, and I'm saying this to just a few of you because I got so many wonderful comments, but when someone invites you into their home, which I'm kind of inviting you to my home, and you notice something is amiss, there's only a few of you that did this, okay, only a very few. Do you really think you make points by pointing it out? Like, look how smart you are. I mean, do you go to somebody's house and say, oh, look at that spot on your couch? Or, ooh, look at what I noticed. Now, you know who I'm talking to. You know who you are. Fine, I just deleted them all. The people who pointed certain things out. It's like, what is wrong? Where is your manners? Somebody invites you to their home. You know, you don't have to say anything. Okay? And here's the other thing. I can probably count on one hand, maybe just twice. Why do you have an unlike button? Okay, especially for YouTube, okay? Now, I kind of know who my unlike is because I get an unlike from one particular person and I know who it is, okay? I know who you are, Lily. Okay, and in fact, that's my way of knowing that she still exists and she's still alive. But I always get at least that. And then there's two more. I usually get between 1 and 3. But I wonder, because now if you have to rate a movie that you've watched, I can understand rating a movie because it's telling other people, do I want to watch this? Is this a good movie? Okay, and particularly if you go to a theater, you pay the money, you sit down, okay? But with YouTube, if you don't like it, don't watch it. Nobody's forcing you. So I think, who are these people that just sit there and go, I don't like that, don't like that. Now, I did do that for a Dave Rubin video because he was interviewing someone that I thought was saying I didn't like the person he was interviewing. But it wasn't against Dave Rubin. But it was kind of my own way of letting him know that I didn't like that person. I thought he didn't question that person enough, challenge some of the things he was saying. And it was about health and it was about authoritarian kinds of things. And he wasn't challenging him enough. I didn't like that. So I thought, oh my God, I'm going to actually put an unlike to this video. But other than that, I wonder about people who do that, who you don't have to tell everything you think. You don't have to comment on everything. Just something to think about. I mean, every day in every way, we've got to think about being kind, being nice. And having said that, let me just say, I love my audience. Some of you, most of you, and the ones that take the time to make a comment, you are, I feel privileged. Like, how lucky am I? I mean, what would I be doing now if I didn't have this outlet, especially during this semi-shutdown? It's like life always provides something. But anyway, I'm really glad you're here. And please don't, just because I point out a few things, but it's more because I know you're nice people. I just think some of you, very few of you, don't think before you make a comment. You don't think about how that sounds. Oh, and let me tell you, this is a very tiny percentage of you. But I like you otherwise. And I just think, wow, where are your manners? And you know who I'm talking about. Okay? So that was a little lecture from Deborah about manners. Okay? And I like flirting, okay? It's okay to flirt. Some of you flirt so good. And remember, I'm from an era where people flirted. I like it when men flirt with me. I'm a single woman, okay? And some of you do it particularly well, okay? You really know how to do it. And you'll know by my response. I mean, there's occasionally someone who doesn't know how to do it, and I'll let you know. But some of you are really good. Anyway, don't be afraid, Andy or Scott. I'll talk to you later.